The Zixthar Assassins Guild had existed for 17,000 cycles. In that time, they had fulfilled contracts on every sentient species in the known galaxy. Emperors, warlords, crime lords, even a few deities. All had fallen to their precision and expertise. Their success rate was 99.7%, a statistic that made governments tremble and criminals pay fortunes for their services. But when Ambassador Krelix of the Vornath Confederation placed a contract on a human diplomat named Sarah Chen, the guild did something unprecedented. They refused. Krelix couldn't believe it. He sat in the obsidian chamber deep beneath the surface of Terminus 7, staring at the guild's representative, a shadowy figure known only as the Veil, with all four of his eyes wide in disbelief. "You refuse." Krelix's translator struggled to convey his shock. "I'm offering 3 times your standard rate." "We know," the Veil replied, their voice a whisper that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. "The answer remains no, but why?" Krelix slammed his appendage on the table. "Your guild has never refused a contract with proper payment." The Veil was silent for a long moment. Then they leaned forward and Krelix saw something he'd never expected to see from an assassin. Fear. "Because, Ambassador, we don't hunt humans, not anymore." The story began 2 cycles earlier when the guild accepted what seemed like a routine contract. A human merchant named David Park had allegedly stolen trade secrets from a Queller corporation. The payment was substantial, and humans were relatively new to the galactic stage. The guild knew little about them, except that they were fragile, slow, and possessed no natural weapons or armor. The guild sent Vexnor, one of their elite operatives. A Thraxian with chameleonic skin and reflexes fast enough to snatch plasma bolts from the air, Vexnor had 300 successful eliminations to his name. He tracked David Park to a mining colony on the edge of the Kepler expanse. The job should have taken 3 hours. Vexnor didn't return for 3 weeks. When he finally staggered back to guild headquarters, he was missing an arm. His exoskeleton was cracked in 17 places, and his left eye had been replaced with a crude cybernetic implant. Worse than his physical state was his psychological condition. Vexnor, who had once killed a Dravaxian warchief in hand-to-hand combat, was broken. "He knew," Vexnor whispered during his debriefing, his voice hoarse. "He knew I was coming. He was ready." The guild masters pressed him for details. What they learned changed everything. David Park hadn't run. He hadn't hidden. Instead, he'd turned the entire mining colony into a death trap. Using nothing but the colony's maintenance equipment, mining tools, and a basic understanding of the facility's systems, Park had created an environment where every advantage Vexnor possessed became a liability. Park had rerouted the atmospheric controls to create pressure differentials that threw off Vexnor's chameleonic adaptation. He'd rigged motion sensors to exploding mining charges. He'd even weaponized the colony's waste disposal system, turning it into something the guild's analysts later described as horrifyingly creative. But the worst part wasn't the traps, it was the hunting. For 17 days, David Park had hunted Vexnor through the colony, not with superior technology or physical prowess, but with relentless, methodical persistence. Park barely slept. He tracked Vexnor through ventilation systems, anticipated his movements, and cut off escape routes with calculated precision. He wasn't trying to survive, Vexnor had said, his voice breaking. He was trying to win. And he talked to me the whole time, through the comm systems, explaining what he was doing, why I would lose. He turned it into a lesson. On the 17th day, Vexnor had finally gotten close enough to attempt the kill. Park had been waiting in the colony's central hub, unarmed and exhausted. But when Vexnor lunged, Park had done something the Thraxian's biology couldn't comprehend. He didn't flinch. Humans, the guild would later learn, possessed something most species had evolved away from, an override switch for their survival instincts. They called it resolve. In that moment, David Park had chosen to stand his ground, accepting death if necessary to land a single blow. He'd grabbed Vexnor's arm mid-strike and shattered it using a combat technique that turned the assassin's own momentum against him. Then he'd dragged the wounded Thraxian to the colony's medical bay and saved his life. He said, Vexnor had whispered during his debriefing, that he wanted me to go back, to tell you what happens when you hunt humans. He said we needed to understand that humans don't have claws or armor or natural weapons, because they don't need them. They have something worse. What? The guild master had asked. Spite. After Vexnor's report, the guild did something unprecedented. They researched humans thoroughly. What they found terrified them. Humans were persistent hunters. Evolution had made them capable of tracking prey for days without rest. They were adaptable, turning any environment into a weapon. They were social, meaning harming one often brought the wrath of many. And most disturbing of all, humans had a documented history of becoming more dangerous when cornered. The guild found records of human soldiers who fought for days with fatal wounds. Civilians who'd overpowered trained killers using improvised weapons. Children who'd survived in environments that would kill most adults. Humans didn't just fight to survive. They fought to prove a point. The guild updated their database. Next to Homo sapiens, they added a single designation, Apex Predator, do not engage now. Sitting across from Ambassador Krelix, the Veil finished the story. David Park survived because he understood something we didn't, the Veil said. Humans spent millions of years as both predator and prey. They know how to hunt and they know how to be hunted. More importantly, they remember every lesson from both. Krelix slumped in his chair. So you won't take the contract? No, the Veil said firmly. And if you're wise, Ambassador, you'll find a diplomatic solution to your problem with Sarah Chen. Because if you send someone else after her, they won't come back. And if they somehow succeed, you'll learn the other thing we discovered about humans. What's that? The Veil's voice dropped to a whisper. They never ever forget. And they always come for revenge. Krelix left the chamber without another word. The contract withdrawn. The Zixthar Assassins Guild returned to their work, hunting every species in the galaxy, except one. Because some prey, they had learned, hunted back.